All right, I just remembered that I need to record this. Let me go ahead and put the date on here. We're missing Elise and Clara and Stone. So you guys will be recording, listening to this recording and writing down your notes. So at this point, you want to go ahead and pause, write all of this down, and then hit play. All right, so hopefully now you're back. So we were talking about the fact that you probably, hopefully, put this in your table of contents. Don't forget to label your pages. That if we are doing anything, rounding, finding equivalents, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing with decimals, as long as we already know how to do that, with whole numbers, we're fine. The only thing that's going to change is where we put the decimal, and also if I'm rounding, I'm going to follow the same rules that I would before, only I've added some additional place values. So I wrote them up here to remind myself of them. So instead of, like we did in the past, saying, okay, round this number to the nearest tens place or thousands place, now I'm also going to include the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths places. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say round to, and it would say the nearest, right? But let's shorten it up. The hundredths place. Now, if there were whole numbers on this number, you want to pay attention. So if it says thousandths, read it correctly. And make sure it says thousandths, then you're looking at the decimal. If it says thousand, you're looking at the whole number. For this, though, I'm going to follow the same rules for rounding that I always have. I'm going to find the number in the hundredths spot, and I'm going to underline it. Okay? Now, my next step is I look to my neighbor to the right, and the rules are 5 or more, let it soar, or whatever you've learned, right? 4 or less, let it rest. So this 6 is either going to stay the same or become a, what, guys? Dawson?
7.
A 7. All right, now the 9 is bigger than the 5. So that 6 will become a 7. Now, all the numbers to the left stay the same, and anything to the right becomes a 0, but not with decimals. Because we don't, now remember those zeros stayed in whole numbers to work like as a space holder. But I don't need a space holder. If I'm rounding to the hundredths place, I can stop at the hundredths place. So again, I'm going to keep the 0, the decimal, and the 1. I keep everything to the left the same. We said that the 6 becomes a 7. Now, I want you to look at this. So we have rounded this number. Anybody want to say this number for us? How would you say this number, the first one? Jacob?
69.
Okay, so think about this entire number. How would you say this number?
169.
169. Now, we discussed yesterday that whatever the number ends on, that place value is decided. So that 9 falls in the what place value? Look up here, Jacob. Here, so we got the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. Now, we talked about, and let me pull this out real quick. You guys will get, I don't think you've needed it yet, but you might, one of these charts. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this. It'll be covered in plastic, and you can use dry erase. So that number was 0.169. So when I look at that number inside of this chart, it's labeled. I will say the number 169 thousandths. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay. So again, yeah, wherever this last number lands, that decides the place value. And that decides what it is called. And we know that it will affect the fraction. How? How does thousandths affect the fraction? Somebody? if I asked you to turn 169 thousandths into a fraction, what would it look like? Caitlin is the only person raising her hand. We went over this yesterday, so just think back one day. Caitlin?
The fraction would look like 169 over 1,000.
Yes, so it would be 169 over 1,000 because right here, this number is in the thousandths place. It's 169,000, so our fraction would be over 1,000. All right, so that aside, we have rounded our number. Again, if I'm rounding to the hundredths place with my decimal, I am not going to add a 0 over it, and let's look at why. So if I take this number, and you don't have to write this, and I round it to the nearest hundredths place, we said that became 0.17. Now I have 17 hundredths. Agreed?
Agreed.
If I followed the regular rounding rules and said everything to the right becomes a 0, now what do I have? Remember that where that number ends decides the place value. So now what do I have, Jacob?
17,000.
Oh, we'll say the number. 170 thousandths. These are not the same. They're not equal. Okay? Because this takes the number and makes it out of 1,000 pieces. Look at this as a fraction. This is 170 out of 1,000. If I look at this as a fraction, it becomes 17 over 100. That's 17 hundredths. That's 17 out of 100. Do you see the difference? Okay? So no zeros at the end. Any questions about that?
I do.
Uh-huh.
Were we supposed to write what you just wrote?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. So go ahead and write that down. That's important. No zeros to the right. And I'm going to girlify that. So will you? So that I really want to emphasize that. Okay? No zeros to the right. You're going to do it. Especially if, it's part of your rounding habits. But we'll break you of it slowly and painfully. Okay. Let's look at... Let me see here. I feel like that is pretty self-explanatory, but let's look at a few more examples and change it up a little bit. Okay, let's do example 2. And remember, you guys speak up if you are not done writing and I move on too quickly.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I'm always a question person. Do they so whenever you take the video of our writing, where do you write it? Because we don't have our math journals.
I would expect that either you write it on a piece of paper at home and then we staple it into your journal, or you just take your journal home. I would just, if I was at home sick and I could just take notes, I would just write them on a piece of paper. Come back and you can glue them in, or I would say just staple them. We just staple the top and the bottom so that they stay in.
Okay, and last thing.
Yeah.
Also.
Good question.
Would we oh gosh, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, would we? Oh gosh, what in the world? We have the okay. We have the we have the journals.
Okay.
And so what if we forget to do the things? Would we just have extra to do?
What do you mean?
If we forget to write it down at home, would we just make it up at school?
Yeah, but not during class time. I mean, if you have makeup work, it's makeup work. You don't make up your makeup work in class, right? So it'd be just like anything else. Any assignment that you don't complete when you're gone, you do it on your own time. So if you had downtime, then yeah, don't totally do it. But yeah, again, if the notes are a major grade, you missing a whole section of them while you're out is not okay. And I have been pretty good about emailing you and CCing your parents when you're out to say, hey, this is available to you. It is on Google Classroom. Get it done. So, all right, same thing here. Here's example 2. Hopefully you've written it down. So this one might say round to the tenths. Okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to find my tenths place, and I'm looking right up here or on the chart that Miss Spam will give me, and I'm just going to do a little flashy flash there, right? I'm going to use that if I'm not sure where the tenths, hundredths, or thousandths are. Okay. Hopefully these look familiar to you. If you were here last year, I know y'all went over them. As a matter of fact, they're literally going over this across the hall right now. So we're just going to take it a little bit further than they are. So it should look familiar, and maybe you just need to kind of make yourself some notes so that you remember, because it's hard to go from like ones, tens, hundreds on this side and it not match on the right. So now you've got tenths, hundred, thousandths. So that can be a little confusing, but we will, like I said, get it down. All right, so if I'm rounding to the thousandths place, I'm rounding to the 3. I check with my neighbor to the right. 5 or more, let it soar. 4 or less, let it rest. So this 3 is either going to stay the same or become a 4. Those are your 2 choices. Thank you, Dawson. I saw that hand. So, Dawson, what do I do?
Put the equal sign.
Okay.
Put a 24 decimal.
Okay. I'm just going to stop there. So he's saying, go ahead and write the 24 decimal, and I'm just going to remind you that everything to the left stays the same. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that down like he's saying.
And then put the 4 or the 3 would go.
The 3 becomes a 4 because of the 9 is 5 or more. Should I put zeros to the right?
No.
No zeros to the right. Why not? What happens if I put a 0 here and make it 0.40?
It'll be 40.
40 what?
Oh.
It becomes 40 hundredths, right?
Yeah.
Which actually, if you think about it, guys, is actually kind of close to what this was. But remember, we're only rounding to the tenths place. So we are rounding. We just want our number to be to the tenths. If we put it to the hundredths, your number's wrong. It's not the answer that you were asked for. Yeah, Michael.
Technically, also, if you do that, it would be the same value. So if you're doing values, then technically it wouldn't really make a difference. But if you're doing rounding, it does.
Well, I mean, it would make it a bigger number than we had,
Make it a
right?
bigger number,
Mm-hmm.
but it would still represent the same amount of places if you just put a 0.
Okay, gotcha. Caitlin.
So then what would that 9 become? Would it just stay the same?
No, we it's just gone. We don't put
we
any
don't
zeros
add
to the
9.
right. Yeah.
Oh.
We use the 9 to decide what happens to the 3, and with the decimals, we're just going to stop right there. Okay? Because we want it rounded to the tenths place. They want it to the tenths place only for whatever reason.
Can I put a note aside for me?
Yeah, of course. Yep, no zeros to the right. Hopefully you have this girlified one up here too. Let me give you another one. If I have a number like this, you guys okay if I zoom in?
Mm-hmm.
And let's mark this as round to ones.
Ooh.
Okay. Okay. So example.
So 7.863 or 7 and, how do I say the rest of this number? Anybody? Dawson?
863,000.
Good. 7 and, don't forget that decimal, 7 and 863 thousandths. Now, my directions tell me to round this to the ones place. So, same old same that we've done on the last two. Here is the place value I'm rounding to. Check with my neighbor to the right. And that number tells me the 7 is either going to stay the same or it's going to become an 8. 5 or more, let it soar. So the 7 will become a 8. And everything to the left would stay the same, but there's nothing there. Everything to the right, what?
There's nothing there. Right?
Right. So what do we want to say here? Everything to the right
Disappears.
is gone, yeah, or disappears.
And girlify it.
And thank you. Michael said girlify it. All right. Everything to the right is gone. So are we going to write 8.0?
Mm-mm.
No.
Would it change the value of the 8 if I did?
Yes.
So if I did 8.0, which I'm not going to, it's technically not wrong. However, it's kind of stupid because, we don't need it. We've always wrote our 8 as an 8. We're not going to start adding in 0 decimals now. Okay. I'm going to do one more. Grab your snack real quick.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, it's time. I know y'all are getting hungry. So grab your snack real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and write the next one down. And then I'm going to try to pause our friends online. All right.
That's not good. I lost my snack. Oh, wait, why is it like
All right. So make sure that you have example 4 written down. And I've noted that we're going to round it to the tens. You guys finish grabbing your snacks and take a second to get this written.
we can use them on test?
You never know. All right. So hopefully we have all of this caught up. Everybody here good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now I just want to give you one more example when we're dealing with decimals and whole numbers. So on this one, they may even tell you, to round it to the tens place. So I'm going to just same old thing. I'm going to note that I am rounding to the tens place. Now notice it's not tenths, but it is tens place. And I check with my friend to the right. 5 or more, let it soar. So that 2 becomes a 3. Now, we have been saying over and over, everything to the right is gone. But that is only for decimals. So I'm going to come up here. And I'm going to note that right up here. I'm going to add that to my notes. That this is only referring to decimals. Okay? Yeah, I just wrote the word decimals. And I'm going to come up here as well. And I'm going to say decimals. Right? So this is a decimal rule only. When I'm looking at 25 and 73 hundredths, if I'm rounding to place value inside the whole numbers, I'm still going to follow the first rounding rules that I started with. And that said, everything to the left stays the same. Everything to the right becomes a...
Nothing.
Ah!
0?
Oh, wait, yeah.
If I am just rounding a whole number. Sorry, I didn't mean to scream, but I was like, what on earth? Kill me now. Okay, don't. I want to live. So if I'm just rounding 25 to the nearest tens place, forget that there's even decimals here. Everything to the left would stay the same, and then everything to the right became a
0.
0. So that 2 becomes a 3. And the 5 becomes a 0. All right. Everything from the decimal is gone. Are you with me? I rounded to the nearest tens place. Okay, so I wanted to give you an example of that to make sure that we were clear there. Okay, and I know that we are out of time. So, no homework today. Tomorrow, when we come back, we'll talk about equivalent decimals and equivalent fractions and what that word equivalent means. So, go ahead and pack up and say, thank you, Lord, there's no homework, but don't forget your IXL leaderboard, okay? We'll take a quick peek at it, and some of y'all need to get with it. All right, bye.
Yeah.